Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a movie that should not have worked. And so to say that it is one of maybe the best MCU movies ever made, in my opinion, is just astounding. Welcome back to Access Blockbusters, and welcome to a look back at the 2022 MCU film that ended Phase 4, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. If you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, well, what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button. It's free. It won't cost you a thing. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Give this video a like if you enjoyed. And guys, stick around on the channel because after Black Panther Wakanda Forever, we have the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. Can't wait to talk about that with you guys. And then we have some videos coming out about rankings, editorials, my thoughts on Phase 4 as a whole, so stay tuned on the channel for that as well. As always, these rewatch videos are broken up into 3 parts. The first part is me going over what I thought about the film the first time I saw it, what the expectations were, the context around the film. The second part is me going through the film on the rewatch, talking about things I liked again, things I didn't like again, things that changed. And then the third part is comparing the first time I saw the film to now and seeing how my opinion might have changed. All right, with all that being out of the way, let's get into Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So like I alluded to at the beginning of this video, this movie just had no business working. I'm sure by this point all of you know what happened before Wakanda Forever, but just to quickly recap, Chadwick Boseman, may he rest in peace, tragically passed away in October, I believe, of 2020. It was something that completely blindsided everybody, and it was just such a tragic and heartbreaking thing. And for me personally, this was one of the very first celebrity actor deaths that I felt something really personal about it, because in the past I hadn't really had an attachment to any particular actor, and so when they passed away, I was obviously very sad. But with Chadwick Boseman, it was just different because, I mean, while he hadn't been in many MCU films before, he had been in some really great ones, and he was just such an integral figure in the Infinity Saga and sort of my experience growing up as an MCU fan, so it was really shocking to see. From there, though, there was the whole controversy of whether or not they would recast Chadwick Boseman. Kevin Feige then came out with Ryan Coogler and said they would not recast Chadwick Boseman, which, again, I've been on the record of saying I thought at the time they should have recast Chadwick Boseman, and this was, again, just not having seen the film, but I was willing to go with whatever vision that Kevin Feige and Ryan Coogler were wanting to go with, because I trusted that they were going to make a decision that truly honored Chadwick Boseman. Because you know what? For as much as we think we love Chadwick Boseman, and trust me, I adore Chadwick Boseman, Kevin Feige and Ryan Coogler loved him so much more than we ever could. So I thought, you know, whatever decision they were going to go with, I trusted them. Which doesn't necessarily mean they were going to make a quote-unquote correct decision, by the way. J.J. Abrams, I'm sure he adored Carrie Fisher more than we ever did, because obviously we didn't get to know her personally, but I also think that the decision to use reused footage from the other films in Rise of Skywalker was maybe not the best idea, because it just didn't come off as well because of just how clunky the dialogue and the scenes were. But again, that's just my opinion, so I was going to trust whatever they were going to do. And honestly, the first time I saw Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I could not believe what a good job that they had done. Now, there were problems with the film. I had a number of problems with the film the first time I saw it. It wasn't the perfect MCU film, but I mean, the first 20 minutes of the movie, I remember just sitting in the theater stunned at how much grief just sort of washed over me. And by the end of the film, I felt so much catharsis, you know, so I was willing to sort of brush aside all the little complaints I had here and there about the movie and just say, look, this was, I mean, what an experience, right? But it's not a movie that you really want to rewatch over and over again because of just the sort of rawness and the pain that was put into the film. And also, obviously, the catharsis, like I mentioned, but it's just not an experience that you want to go through many times. And so this was a rewatch that I was looking forward to because I enjoyed Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I thought it was really well made, but also I was dreading a little bit just because of going through those emotions one more time. And I will say, right off the bat, as we get into Wakanda Forever on the rewatch, that the first 20 minutes, again, were heartbreaking. It is just unbelievable how much a silent montage of Chadwick Boseman, how much emotion that can wring out of you. And by that point, we had seen the opening scene. I think that was such a beautiful and heartbreaking way to open a film like this, where you just dive right in and we hear about Chadwick Boseman, or I guess T'Challa in this case, but it feels like Chadwick Boseman, you know, his death in this Marvel universe and his character's death. And then we see Shuri's pain. And right off the bat, again, I'm not going to get into anything personal. I'm not going to get into the news and all these other things about, you know, certain actors, but I'm just going to talk about their performances. And I think that Letitia Wright, she just is an incredible actress in this film. She gives it her all. Right from the very beginning, the amount of pain that she is able to embody. Because if you remember Shuri from previous MCU films, from Infinity War and from Black Panther 1, she was a very jovial, kind of wisecracking, sarcastic character, the little sister to T'Challa. But in this film, it very much feels like this character is going through the pain that a character would go through seeing her brother die and thinking that she had a chance to save him with the heart-shaped herb. And so just feeling all of that within the first 20 minutes. I think that the first 20 or so minutes of Black Panther Wakanda Forever are perhaps, I think, just poignant, some of the most poignant scenes that I've seen in a movie in a long time. Because again, we're going through the pain on our own as well. From there, we get a scene with Angela Bassett in the UN. And I have to say, aside from Letitia Wright, Angela Bassett might be one of the most intimidating presences I've seen on screen, just period. My goodness, what a performance that she gives. In that UN scene alone, and then later in the throne room scene, and when she's talking to Shuri at the beach. I mean, Angela Bassett's just putting on a clinic. This performance completely blew me away. From there, we get a scene with Namor, and he attacks the US ship that's trying to find vibranium. I think this is a very interesting subplot, actually. I think that the idea that the United States and other foreign countries are trying to get vibranium for themselves is actually a fascinating topic to delve into. I wish they delved into it more. We'll get into that later, but it's a very interesting setup for the film, and it gets Namor, I'm going to mess that up so many times in this video, Namor involved in the conflict in a way that's very organic to me, because yeah, I mean, it's something that we hadn't even thought of. Like, we thought Wakanda was the only nation with vibranium. Turns out there's Talokan, so that's really interesting as well. So we're a little bit into Act 1, and this is one of the most grounded, heavy films in the MCU. And we see the themes building of Shuri trying to overcome her grief, but she's only able to bottle up and rage. We see that in the conversation with her and Queen Ramonda at the beach. She is unable to overcome her grief, and instead it bottles itself up into rage. And so I think the heaviness of the first little bit it's a lot for sure, but I also think that it's some of the most mature storytelling in the MCU. That being said, the next 30 minutes or so, especially with Ironheart at MIT, I understand the MCU kind of has to go back to light, because I mean, I think a movie that was this heavy the entire time, not many movies can pull that off. Logan is an example of that for a superhero film that can do that. At the same time, I feel like a lot of the scenes at MIT swung back too far in the other direction. So the rest of the first act and heading into the second act where Shuri is captured feels a little too goofy for the movie's sake. And I mean, I like Dominique Thorne as Ironheart. I think that she has charisma, just like Tom Holland did as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But I feel like they didn't write the character well enough. I feel like it's just the generic, prodigy, child genius at this point who has an Iron Man suit, because while I think Dominique Thorne's charisma is carrying her through this performance, I just think that there's not a lot interesting about the character, at least in this film. We'll see about the show. We also get some Everett Ross, and now that we know what he was up to post Wakanda Forever, it's kind of interesting to see, what version of the character are we seeing here, but again, that's a question for Phase 5, I guess. And his whole subplot with Val is interesting, because, look, it's setting up that the United States wants vibranium, right? And Val is a shady character who is going to do whatever it takes to get whatever she wants. And so I think that on that level, that kind of subplot, quite interesting, something that they should develop further. However, I'm going to jump very quickly to the third act here, so stay with me. I think that what I realized while watching this film again is that there is a dangling subplot, a loose subplot, a missing subplot. I'm not entirely sure how to phrase that, but what they were setting up throughout this entire film is that the United States wants vibranium and is going to attack Wakanda. So what am I expecting now when I get to the end of the movie? I'm expecting, obviously, the conflict between Namor and Shuri to come to a head, but I'm also expecting the United States to attack Wakanda. They don't. I think that that's why these scenes feel superfluous and they feel unnecessary, because they were setting up something that wasn't going to get paid off in this film. Why that is, I can only speculate. My best guess is that Kevin Feige and co saw the first cut of the film. Maybe there was a little bit of a battle at the end with the United States attacking Wakanda, and they just said, look, we're going to save this for Black Panther 3. We're going to save this for another MCU film down the line, so just hold off for a little bit. So Ryan Coogler had to set this part up, but he couldn't pay it off. That's just my guess. Anyways, getting back to the earlier parts of the film, the action is quite good, actually. The scene in MIT and in Boston where they're flying around and driving around, it's quite good. And then the spear fight with Okoye and Atuma on the bridge, that's a visceral kind of fight. And what I love about Ryan Coogler's direction here is that there's very little music. You'll notice that in the scenes that two characters are just going head to head, there's very little music, and I think that adds to the visceral sort of nature of these scenes as well, which is really great. Heading back to Wakanda, just give Angela Bassett the Oscar. Seriously, just give it to her. She didn't get it, which is crazy, but I'll give her an Oscar if it means anything to her. It's also good to see Nakia, though I feel like she doesn't have much to do in the film. Speaking of not having much to do in the film, M'Baku is in the movie as well, and I really like him. I love Winston Duke in this role. Just, again, a little bit underused, that's all. But then we get to the Namor flashbacks. So here's the thing about these. I appreciate them very much because it shows that Ryan Coogler is thinking very deeply about this villain as a character, because Honestly, you can understand that this is a ruler who's trying to protect his people, and Wakanda, specifically T'Challa, has exposed vibranium as a resource to the world, which then has these foreign countries like the United States trying to find vibranium, and then that exposes Talokan. So you can understand Namor's motivation, and obviously all the stuff that he had to go through in the 1600s, I believe. So all that is really great villain motivation. At the same time, it feels just kind of like an exposition dump in the middle of the movie, which not to compare the second and the first film, but I kind of have to because, it's Ryan Coogler's 2 MCU films. But I feel like we didn't get that kind of exposition dump from Eric Killmonger. It just kind of felt more organic. You saw those little bits and pieces here through flashbacks and through the ancestral plane, whereas here it's just an entire elongated 10-minute sequence. That being said, it shows again that Ryan Coogler is trying to put effort into this villain and making sure that he is an understandable character, and I really do appreciate that. But the movie is dragging a little bit here. So then we get back to Wakanda and we get the Wakanda flooding scene. Again, you can tell how intentional Ryan Coogler is about every little bit of this film. The music, the cinematography, the action, the shots, the acting, everything is so intentional. And the scene when Queen Ramonda dies is heartbreaking. Your heart just shatters all over again, and you feel those raw emotions. And I think actually my favorite line in this movie, one of the best written lines in this film, is when M'Baku tells Shuri, "The world has taken too much from you to still be considered a child." That is such a powerful line. It shows the character progression of Shuri from the first Black Panther, where she was pretty much a kid, to now where she's having to take the weight of the kingdom on her shoulders. And you can feel that rage, which leads so nicely into the Killmonger scene. And here I just feel like this is such a perfect thematic scene to have. At first, when I saw the movie the first time, I was like, oh, kind of a cheap little cameo, but it's fun to see Michael B. Jordan. But this time I understood what Ryan Coogler was going through, because his intention with this scene is to show that Shuri is not motivated by the love of Wakanda or her ancestors or her deceased relatives, but it's vengeance for them instead of, caring for the country and caring for her nation. And that is clearly shown through this Ghost of Killmonger. So it's really well done, actually. I really like it. And then we get to the climax of the film. And I think the boat part is, I get it. You have to draw out the people from Talokan on the water, but why can't you just bring them to the coast or something like that? I don't know. It feels a little bit forced. I appreciate that Namor and Shuri are fighting on dry land because that makes a little bit more sense. And that fight is visceral. I love just how raw it feels, if that makes sense. It's a really well done fight, from the choreography to the cinematography and just from the minimal music that's used there. The fight on the boat just feels like there wasn't a lot of thought put into it. And again, I can't help but feel like instead of the fight on the boat, there should have been either a third fight going on with the United States attacking Wakanda for vibranium, or you could have, I don't know, that be the B subplot instead in the final act. But again, who am I to say? But it makes the final act just feel very short and rushed. I think that's my main problem with it. But again, the Shuri and Namor fight, I could have done without the reverse flashback where everything is going back in reverse, because it feels like Ryan Coogler is trying to really hammer the point home when I think we kind of understood what was going on. I just kind of wanted to see Angela Bassett appear in the ancestral plane. I think that was really good. But again, those are just minor nitpicks, because I think that the ending of this film, when Shuri is on the beach and she's burning the funeral garments, it all comes full circle, right? This is a movie ultimately about healing from grief, and you see the full transition from Shuri as she goes from rage to healing and acceptance, and she sees T'Challa and she hears him in the wind. It's such a beautiful film that now I look back on it and I go, I did say they should have recast T'Challa, and if you still think that's totally fine, they didn't. That's not what they did, and so we're gonna have to go with it, whatever you do believe. But I'm willing to say here and now that they made the right choice. I think they made such a beautiful film, channeling in all of their grief and making it, taking us on that journey as well. And I think that's so beautiful. And so honestly, comparing this to the first time I saw this movie, I think that the flaws of the film structurally and as a film, they are glaring for sure. I think the middle part of the film drags a little bit, and I think that there are some elements like that dangling subplot with Val in the United States. It's very obvious this time around. And, I think the Riri Williams stuff, the Ironheart stuff is fine, but it's not my favorite part of the movie. But the emotional parts of this movie are so resonant that it elevates just the entire rest of the movie. And I think that what else is clear is that Ryan Coogler had a vision from start to finish about how to deal with grief. And I love that, because this is a heavy and yet cathartic MCU film. And I think that this is just not something you see in superhero films, just in general, even in the MCU. And so I can't say enough good things about this, because this movie took me on the journey with it to recovering from the grief that I felt when Chadwick Boseman died. And I think that that's wonderful. I think that that's great. So I love this movie so much. But what do you guys think of Black Panther Wakanda Forever? Let me know in the comments down below. We have one more project, guys, and then we'll be heading into the rankings and editorials. So stay tuned on the channel for that. Subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. Give this video a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.